Hello, my absolutely beautiful astrology soulmates, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to dive into what is coming up in the upcoming Venus retrograde as it's going to dance between the energies of Aries and then Pisces. Now, I will start out by telling you this right away. This is not going to be a passive retrograde at all. And as with retrogrades of personal planets, when they take their retrograde energy, they become closer to the earth. So it is a retrograde that we are going to definitely feel the impact of. And we're going to be really being asked under the Venusian energy, not just about our love and our romance, but to define how we love, to redefine how we love, to redefine how we value things in our relationships, things around our finances. There's a lot that's going to be going into this. So what I've done is in this particular video, we're going to talk about the basics of the Venus retrograde. We'll also talk about the path and the pattern where it cycled before. I'm going to give you the key dates so that you can follow it all the way through the retrograde cycle. But then I've built this into a series for each of us so that we can go a little bit deeper into the Venus retrograde. So the video you will see releasing tomorrow, the day after you see this one, will be myself and Nicholas Palomonakis, and we're going to bring into this Venus retrograde the signatures that Mercury and the eclipse that are going to play into this retrograde as well, and what that's telling us about this story. After that, you will see that Andrea, Michelle, and I bring in the goddesses that are also going to take us that next level into the astrology and looking at the places where we're going to tell the story of reclamation with this Venus retrograde. The last video in your series will be myself and Miss Tiffany Harlick, which you've already seen in your 2025 horoscopes in the spiritual development section. She's bringing in fixed star curb so that we can see the story of where we have betrayed ourselves. And the reason I've decided to do it this way is because I think it can be really, really helpful to each of us, because the Venus retrograde is going to be a story that doesn't just last from the dates that I'm going to talk to you about, but we're really going to see the implications for it all year long. Not to mention, we're experiencing this Venus retrograde at a time where the world and the globe itself are changing so much around us that getting in alignment with what it is that you truly want, where you truly value yourself, the things that you truly value, so that when you're pointing your energy at it, you're able to call it to you. But also in this place where we have to get really clear about why you are doing what you are doing. Why are you chasing what you're chasing? How are you handling rejection when things are not going your way? What is this like for your true internal environment? And that's where this Venus retrograde is really taking each of us to our own particular school. So let me tell you two more things before we actually jump in here. First of all, please grab your particular chart, because when I give you the dates and I give you the degrees of where the Venus retrograde is happening, you want to see where this is happening in your particular chart, because the very best astrology is your astrology. So I want you to know what house this is happening in for you, so that as you're in school and as this story is playing out, instead of being overwhelmed at the intensity that a retrograde can bring to us, especially Mars or Venus, right? You are a little bit more prepared going into this, and you can say, okay, wait, no, I know that this is supposed to be happening. This is exactly what I'm working on. I don't have to look all around for it. This is where my school session is in session for me, okay? The other thing is that in order to really celebrate walking through this Venus retrograde together and looking at how it's going to impact us the entire year, I've put my Venus Reset program on sale for us for the duration of the Venus retrograde. Now, if you've never gone through the Venus retrograde program, I'm telling you, it is an amazing experience at getting realigned with not only the Venus energy in your chart, but your sacred pelvic bowl, because in this program, it is 22 days of easy being. I'm going to help you redefine your relationship with rest, with attracting things to you. We're going to look at your self-care. We're going to look at your patterns in relationship, and we're going to clean out that pelvic bowl. I mean, listen to me. In your pelvic bowl, and I'm just telling you this from experience, I've taken the program I built, right? Looking at and understanding pretty genuinely how to stop attracting to you some experiences, especially in your relationships and your finances, that you don't want to have anymore, with a lot of clarity around what can be healed and what can be released. Looking at the stories that you're holding in your hips, do you have really, really tight hips? And it's not that things are just tight because you're not that flexible. It's because there's a story of an old lover, or maybe there's resentment from your society because your society or your country or your community told you if you did such and such a thing, everything would be okay, right? During Venus retrograde, we're going to have an opportunity to re-look at and reclaim all of these energies. So I've put my program on sale all the way until April 12th. So make sure you click in the description box down below. I'm telling you, it is the most beautiful, soothing, Venusian thing that you're going to get to go through. And your job is no heavy lifting. Your job is to receive the daily information that's coming to you and do the gentle exercises that go with it. So click in the description box down below to join, okay? All right, into this Venus retrograde. So first of all, if you've been thinking to yourself, or you're starting to have this feeling already coming up for you that like, whoa, Venus retrograde, I'm starting to feel it already. And I know that when Venus retrograde, it always brings something up for me. You would be absolutely correct, because these things work in cycles. So Venus works in an 8-year cycle. So if we go back into your life into about 2017, and then you can take 8-year cycles from then, right? You're not wrong. We've seen some signature of this energy already, right? So now we want to go back in, because the better part of just knowing your astrology and getting your chart is going exactly back into the story that's already kind of played out, so that we can uncover it, pop the top of that thing, and look at where we're going to reclaim and master this particular energy. So let me pop up on the screen here the chart, and we're going to talk about some of these days so that you can see it and also be learning your astrology as we go. Okay, so let's talk first here about the timeline of this transit so that we can work with it really, really consciously. Now, as we got to January 28th of 2025, this is where we saw Venus enter into the pre-retrograde shadow time. And this is at 24 degrees of Pisces. So what started happening here is Venus is slowing down and starting to take a little bit of note, right? So for each of us, we would have been turning around and starting to look at, okay, what's starting to come to my attention here? What is starting to come up in my life that is maybe a pattern that I already saw? It was already here in 2017. Where do I feel like this energy is starting to get my attention in some way, right? Then we see Venus actually take retrograde March 1st of 2025, and this is going to be at 10 degrees of Aries. So in your chart, the thing you want to be mapping out first and foremost is between 10 degrees of Aries and 24 degrees of Pisces. These are going to be the houses, the planets that maybe are involved, that are going to be really at work in your particular chart. Now, of course, if you have any planets that are in opposition or are in square to this, that's going to amplify the story. But start right here from 10 degrees of Aries to 24 degrees of Pisces. Now, when we get to March 27th of 2025, we're going to see that Venus re-enters into Pisces in that retrograde motion. So now we've come from that Aries vibration and we're going back into Pisces for some review. We will see that Venus comes direct April 12th, back to that 24 degrees of Pisces, and Venus will leave the post-retrograde shadow time May 16th when it gets back to that 10 degrees of Aries and can move on. However, here's the thing I want you to kind of start to wrap your head around, is that as Venus starts this journey, really, in its retrograde form, in this bold, independent Aries kind of energy, before it dips back in retrograde into that more dreamy, deep emotional waters of the Pisces terrain, it's easy to say these energies could not be more different, right? Aries says, I want it now and I deserve to live, damn it, I'm going for it. While Pisces is more about dissolving the edges, making you question what's real, what's fantasy. But I don't actually think that they are that different. In order to step forward into the new values and the new identity that Venus in Aries is going to have us review and reclaim, we've also got to have a place where we can soften back into a new belief and creating a new reality that we then go forward and live out. But let's talk about these one by one. As Venus takes this retrograde in Aries, it's going to put that big fiery spotlight and energy on, first of all, how do we approach relationships? Venus is the dynamics of how do we get along with others in relationships, right? How diplomatic are we? How do we harmonize in relationships? How do we galvanize in relationships or not? But there's also going to be an emphasis on, of course, money and financial beliefs, blocks, areas in your life. And bigger than that, I think, is about self-worth, right? How you value yourself and the value that you therefore exude to the world around you because of how you value yourself. Now, Aries is this warrior energy, so it doesn't want to wait. It doesn't want to wait for love. It doesn't want to wait for money. It doesn't want to wait for any of these things. It wants to pursue it. But Venus is not a pursuing planet. Venus is not a hustle hard planet. It's a planet that attracts things to me, right? And now Venus retrograde is slowing down its energy to put us in a position and force us to ask some questions. One, what am I chasing? Am I chasing what I want? Or am I chasing something for the sake of chasing something, right? That's a very Aries tendency to say, I want to go get it, so I'm going to go get it. But then once I get it, I maybe don't want it anymore. Or I'm going to get something to have something to do. So this is a great question. Am I chasing what I want? Or am I chasing something, going after something for the sake of doing it? And this can be, depending on the area of your chart, the house that it's happening in. Is this, romance and finance, or is this education? Are you getting that degree because someone somewhere told you it's the right thing to do, even if it's not what you want to do? This is a great line of questioning to take into that. Do you trust that what is meant for you is actually going to come if you don't force it? This is a real challenge. When we're talking about Venus, the ability to stand confidently in your fire, in that Venus Aries energy, this area of your chart, and say, I have been clear about what I want, why I'm chasing it, and that I do desire it. Now I'm going to let it come to me because I know that I've already called it. What is your relationship at this time with knowing that you have solidly put in very clear footwork in alignment with your desires, and now you can trust what's coming to you and that it will be coming to you? I talked about rejection in the beginning of this video. This Aries energy, that's not a fan of rejection, right? So looking at too, how do you handle rejection or disappointment, especially when it comes to your love, your finances, your beauty standards, your self-worth? Does your self-worth take a hit when you hear the word no, or when there is a perceived rejection coming to the table? And the last thing I just want to give you in a general way to think about, because there's going to be plenty to think about and review during this retrograde, is where are you being impatient with yourself? Right? Where are you being impatient with yourself? Because remember that Venus in Aries wants things first and wants things fast, but the retrograde at this time is saying not so fast. Let's check what you're really doing and where you're really going. Is that in alignment? So this is a time to be reviewing and reclaiming. Now, it is still Venus retrograde. Old lovers can absolutely resurface. Now, whether that means they pop up at your front door, they pop up in your DMs, they pop up in a dream, they pop up, you open an old yearbook, right? It's not necessarily during a Venus retrograde that someone's coming back into your life because they're actually like the one, right? It's not to say that they're not. That will depend on your particular chart, but it's because Venus is like drawing to you an opportunity to say, what have I learned from the past here? What have I learned from the past, from this past relationship pattern? Where am I in my relationship patterning? Where am I in my value and self-worth patterning around this person or around this relationship, and even around this financial situation? When you go back into your life, into 2017, what was going on in your relationship patterns? You know, were you going after someone who was really emotionally unavailable? Thus, you were likely pretty emotionally unavailable. And now, as you're coming forward here into 2025, how does this look in your life? Does this look different? Are you able to draw and spend time with people that are more available? Was there a financial situation you found yourself in, and now you're back in a similar situation, right? So it's going to be time that we're going to be looking at that. Now, when we get to that March 27th place and we see Venus slide back into Pisces, this is where actually, you know, you would think in Aries and this fiery energy would be like, yeah, learning all this stuff, and we are. But I feel like it's actually in Pisces that we get a little bit of a spirit reality check. Right? And this is where I think it gets interesting, because as Venus slips back into Pisces, this is first of all a sign where she's exalted. So full power, really ready to work for us. And Pisces being just like the ultimate dreamer, right? The ultimate inspiration. But it's also the sign of spiritual love. It's the sign of where do I submit and surrender? And these are not bad words in this alignment. Where is there illusion going on? So this is where also things can get a little bit tricky. So where I think that Venus and Pisces points our energy to now is the question of, am I holding on to something that's not real? Am I holding on to a love that's not real? Right? Because what does that look like? What does love mean to you? If love means one thing, then the behaviors have to look like this. If love means this, the behaviors have to look like this. So what am I holding on to in terms of love, or in terms of finance, or in terms of my self-worth that's not really real anymore? Where am I romanticizing something that is, I'm romanticizing something that's actually painful. And what it really is it's an unhealthy pattern, right? Where am I romanticizing that pain, but it's actually an unhealthy pattern? And so I can begin to see how to let it go because it's not real. Where am I being honest with myself about, at my soul level, what I truly need in a relationship, what I truly need around my finances, what I truly need to feel worthy and valuable to myself? And it's interesting because I feel like this is a portion of the retrograde where you could find yourself, just the nature of Piscean terrain, feeling the most lost or, emotionally vulnerable, because there's a lot of nostalgia as we're going back into this. In reclamation, in retrograde, we have to go back in. So here, this is where I want to also tell you, we've got a Pisces stellium going on. There is a lot of energy, including that North Node in Pisces, including that Saturn being in Pisces. There are helpers over there. So I think that this is where you have a really great opportunity to do some real healing, to do some real surrendering out what your reality checks are going to be showing you. Because Pisces will also dissolve what's not true. But we have to be willing to see it clearly, and we see it clearly through spiritual and sacred eyes. What we see here is not necessarily logical, right? It's what is the truth of your instincts? What are the truths of your intuition knows, right? I just remember this really great example from Stephen Forrest, who's one of my teachers, and he talks about how one of his clients, the minute she met a partner that she was with, she didn't necessarily care for the way that he smelled, right? He was a good guy. He wasn't dirty, none of these things. But his scent to her was just a little bit off. And she thought, whatever, people have smells. And she stayed with him for a very, very long time. And they bonked around on each other until they couldn't, until they could finally get out of that relationship. And she said, I knew in the beginning, my intuition told me he didn't smell right. He didn't smell like my partner, right? And so it's like this is it's not necessarily that it's super logical, right? But what's your intuition, or what's an instinct peeking up and telling you in one of these areas? Now, one of the things I will say is that until you know that you are seeing things really very clearly, I would not make any major romantic or financial decisions here, because this is more of a period of review, not necessarily so much of action, especially because at the beginning of this retrograde, Mars is still out of bounds. So some like real off-key behavior is definitely available. And you don't want to necessarily, you don't want to quit that job just because you're like, I deserve better. Okay, well, let's look at there's another way to increase those earnings or to negotiate that salary. You don't necessarily want to leave your partnership or your marriage, unless, of course, there is violence, right? Of course, right? When really what has to happen is the relationship has to dissolve in one form so that it can live in another, So I wouldn't necessarily suggest your chart pending to make either of those really big decisions. So one of the things that I boiled this down when I was really looking at it in a very general way is that I think that the real lesson of this particular Venus retrograde is about looking at the truth of what we're doing and why we're doing it. But we're looking at what we're doing, why we're doing it through the lens of intuitive clarity. And this is going to allow us to up our relationship with ease, calling and attracting ease into our lives because we're honestly in alignment with what it is that we would like to be experiencing. Venus rules receiving, but if you're always in Aries mode, right, which is where I think we get a nice break with Venus moving into Pisces, because if you're always in Aries mode, it is the nature of Aries to chase, to push, to force, right? But that might not be you actually vibrating with what you want. So the retrograde gives you a chance to ask yourself, where can I relax and let things flow? Where can I be clear about what I want and then relax and let things flow? How do I move in more alignment rather than fear and desperation? Venus, I think, also is our reminder, again, that this is not a hustle hard energy. You don't have to force attraction of anything. It's there, it's not there. Whether it's love, whether it's money, whether it's your dream, whether it's that job that you want to do, that friendship group you want to be a part of, right? You have to become the magnet of this Venusian area of your chart for what you desire. Become the magnet. But what's your relationship with receiving? What's your relationship with rest? In that pelvic bowl of yours, when you're standing on your hips, how does your stomach feel? How does your back feel? How do your hips feel? Are they loose? Can you move in them? Is this still kind of a juicy vibration, right? And I'm not talking about being young and having those juicy hips. I'm talking about where is there some self-love that is self-worth alignment through understanding ease and pleasure and play and reconnecting with that? How can we move in a space of really wanting to call these beautiful things into our lives and we don't have a self-love program that is really we're living out daily, right? So this is a great time, I think, to call back to it. And again, I really invite you back to the Venus Reset program. That's why it was created. When I came to Spain, Venus grabbed me by the hair and said, sit down, you are going to help my kids. And it's about unblocking this Venus energy. So stop chasing. We're going to move to the position of attracting and reclamation. And I am telling you, if you are feeling the heat right now of old lovers, toxic power, patterns, undervaluing yourself, struggling with self-care, this is for you. This is for you, okay? All right, my loves. So tell me, what do you think about this Venus retrograde? Where is it happening in your particular chart? Are you starting to see some things come up already? I can tell you, for me, this Venus retrograde, my Venus is at 0 degrees of Aries, opposing my Mars at 0 degrees of Libra. So school is in session for Miss Stormie Grace. There is a lot of learning, and I'm already starting to see some things percolate to the surface, right? So what are some themes that may be already creeping in for you? Drop a comment below and let me know how Venus is starting to key your attention to her song in your life in your particular chart, okay? All right, beautiful friends, I'm sending you so much love. I'm sending you so much ease and attraction, and I want to welcome you at the end of this video to the next videos in your series. Make sure you check that one out or check this one out. It's not going to matter which order you watch them in, but sit with it. Grab your chart, listen to what we're saying, listen for the similarities and where you can relate, and breathe it in. We really are here to help you as astrologers walk energetically through what is a pretty intense time. There's lots and lots of celebration going on for what you're doing well, the lessons that you have outgrown, but there is some work. So school is in session. We're going to be taken to task a little bit, so we want to make sure we're good guides to help you along the way. All right, beautiful friends, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.